It's time to sound the alarms because Doug Armstrong has officially pulled off a heist, and it was at the expense of the Edmonton Oilers. Welcome into another edition of the Blues Breakdown Podcast. We're coming off another winning week for the Blues. They go 2-1-0. They wrap up their homestand this coming Tuesday with a tough game against Winnipeg, who at the time of this recording, they are undefeated, but they're playing at 2 here today against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And the heist is Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway. And for this one, more specifically, we're going to focus on Philip Broberg. Points in every game. And up until last night, the Saturday game against Carolina, he hadn't been on the ice for a goal against, and it was just a power play goal. So he hasn't even been on the ice for a 5-on-5 goal against. And Philip Broberg has been outstanding for the St. Louis Blues so far through 6 games. He's comfortable with the puck. He looks confident when he's making plays. And to me, not to jump too far ahead, but the play that really sticks out, and yes, he had the assist against the Islanders for the overtime winner, and we'll get to that, and he had the assist on Holloway's goal. But to me, what sticks out, and I can't remember exactly how much time was left, might have been like a minute 30, minute 15, something like that of this game against Carolina. Blues clinging to the 1-goal lead. Broberg made a play where he kind of got his stick down on the ice, stopped a pass going across to the middle, and then at the same time banked it off the boards and cleared the puck out and just looked comfortable doing it. He didn't look rushed. And to me, that was probably one of the biggest plays of the game because who knows what happens if that pass gets through. But he just looks confident out there. He made that big play to secure the win last night. The Blues hang on to beat the Hurricanes 4-3. But the week began not on the best note. They start at home against Minnesota, the home opener, and really, we kind of talked last week about how we thought there would be a good push from the Blues, and there was. I think they were out shooting Minnesota like 15-4 at one point in that game, but to me, the best way to describe that, it was just a weird one. They dominate the first period, and then you look up and you're down 1-0. Ryan Hartman with a power play goal off a high-sticking penalty that I guess was high sticking. That's what they say it was. It didn't look like high sticking, but we move. Jacob Lacko gets a short-handed goal, makes it 2-0. And the game that, you thought it was a weird game, the Blues were dominating. Well, it gets even weirder because it looks like Kyrou scores, but apparently the play was blown dead. Was it blown dead too early? Maybe. That's besides the point. You can't obviously go back and change it once it's blown dead. I was in the building on Tuesday. It kind of, seemed like there was still a loose puck. Maybe not. Anyways, Blues still down 2-0, and you after 2, what you had seen that last week, beginning on the road, you felt like there was a chance. Obviously, they had made comebacks, they had been in games, but any hope of that was dashed pretty quickly. Marco Rossi, 45 seconds into the third, puts the game away 3-0. Just over halfway through, though, Matthew Joseph, he gets his first as a Blue, and maybe kind of injects some life back into it. The Blues had a good chance. I think it was Thomas, came right down the middle and didn't score there, but maybe would have got him back into the game. But and then the 18th goalie goal in NHL history, Philip Gustafsson kind of puts the game on ice with a dagger, makes it 4-1. The Wild get out of St. Louis with a win. But, that was a weird game. It was one of those games where I felt like the Blues didn't deserve to lose 4-1. Maybe they deserved to lose because they the power play goal from Hartman, bad defensive play there. I think it was Parayko and Leddy that were on the ice. Shorthanded goals, you just can't have that happen. You have to win the special teams battle. And then the Marco Rossi goal, that one kind of escapes me exactly how that happened because it was so early into the third. But, it just didn't feel like they deserved to lose 4-1, but they did. But credit to the Blues. They bounced back Thursday going up against the Islanders, and that's a tough one too. It's Eastern Conference. You don't see those teams obviously a whole lot. But not only that, you're taking on a tough goalie in Ilya Sorokin. Took to overtime to beat him. But lucky for the Blues, Joel Hofer was perfect on Thursday night. He stops 34 of 34 in the win. And the Blues pick up a 1-0 win thanks to a Jake Neighbors overtime winner. And while we're on the topic of Hofer and Neighbors, it was in overtime that the Blues were kind of hemmed in. I think it was Buchnevich that finally kind of was able to skate the puck to center. And they had been on that line. I can't remember exactly who was out there, but they had been out there for most of the overtime. And Buch just threw it back to Hofer. And I wasn't really sure what Hofer was going to do there, but he found Broberg with a beautiful bank pass off the boards. And then Broberg with maybe an even prettier pass to Neighbors, just kind of sauced it in front. It was a pass, and it was just an easy little deflection for Neighbors to beat Sorokin. But that game as a whole just felt like what you want to see from the Blues. Obviously, the 5-on-5 scoring wasn't there, but they were great defensively. They covered all their bases. That was the first game without Nick Leddy, who was hurt, and the Blues certainly didn't look like they were missing him back on the back end, and that's not supposed to be a shot at Nick Leddy, but he just hasn't looked good. so far when he's been on the ice. But that game, it didn't feel like anybody was a liability. I was looking at hockey stat cards, and I was at that game Thursday night, and like just watching that Holloway, Schenn, Joseph line, they definitely gave up a couple scoring chances, but I didn't feel like they were a liability, and they were the bottom three in terms of impact on the game. And so that to me was like the tell that might have been the best 60 minutes they had played all year, just because it didn't feel like that Holloway, Schenn, and Joseph even played that bad, but there they were at the bottom of the impact rating on the game. And obviously Philip Broberg with the assist. That guy is just unbelievable. That pass to Neighbors was disgusting, and he made the point streak survive. After that game, Hofer stopping 34-34, I think, people maybe thought you go back to Bennington after the game, after he hadn't played since Tuesday against Minnesota, but Bannister rides the hot hand. He goes back to Hofer. He was solid again. He was really under siege, especially in the first period. They were lucky to only get out of that down 1-0. I mean, they were outshot 19-4, I think it was, after the first period. So Hofer's the reason it wasn't 3 or 4-0 after one period of play. And finally, in that second period, after surviving that first punch from Carolina, they were able to get some 5-on-5 offense going. Matthew Joseph ties it. Probably the coolest moment, though, was his brother getting the second assist. It was Schenn that found P.O. Joseph in the slot. He came down, fed right back to Schenn, who it was like a crunch play almost, because Joseph, Schenn, and Joseph weren't that far from each other. But Matthew Joseph, a beautiful screen in front from Saad, ties the game 1-1. I think it was like a minute and a half later. Good play by Bolduc. He lifts the stick of the Hurricanes defenseman, feeds Neighbors, and Neighbors makes it 2-1. And just seeing that 5-on-5 scoring, it was something that really wasn't there for most of the season so far. But to be able to get that, and hopefully that maybe gets something going for the Blues, because they need it big time, so you don't have to just completely continue to rely on special teams throughout the season. And then finally, after what felt like he had quite a few chances on Thursday against the Islanders, and just at certain times throughout the year already, Dylan Holloway finally gets his first goal as a Blue. It was an unreal finish going between the legs to make it 3-1, but maybe an even better play from Broberg. He gets the drop pass from Holloway. He weaves his way through the Carolina defense, sets up Holloway, makes it 3-1, and pretty cool. Holloway gets an assist on Broberg's first as a Blue, and Broberg gets an assist on Holloway's first as a Blue. And that put them up 3-1, but Carolina, obviously, that team is relentless. They're a good team. They've been going deep into the playoffs for the last few years for a reason. They strike quickly in the third. Shane Goss to spare from the point. Hofer had no chance. He couldn't see anything. Cuts it to 3-2, and not that long after, the goal that Hofer's probably going to want back was Roslovic beating him 5-hole with just a slap shot off the wall to tie it 3-3. But credit to the Blues. Again, what we've been saying all year long, this team doesn't just lay down. I think last year, if that would have happened, things would snowball. But this year's team is doing a really good job of not letting things snowball. And part of that, again, Kasperi Kapanen, there was a loose puck just kind of floating around the Hurricanes' blue line. Kapanen jumps on it, skates around Brent Burns, and then beats Chekhov to make it 4-3, which ended up being the final. So, Kapanen, who's maybe had a little bit of a rough go of it in the first 5, gets the game winner in Game 6. To get the Blues to 4-2, but yeah, that was just a good play. Kapanen looked like he was shot out of a cannon when he was jumping on that loose puck. So a big goal there gives the Blues the win. But like I said, you just can't stress enough how good this team is, how resilient they are. They're not letting things snowball, and it's a much more enjoyable watch than last year, which obviously the bar isn't too high. But I'd be curious to know how other people are feeling about this team, just because I'm enjoying it, and I think it's a good watch, but I know there are definitely some things that they need to clean up. But so far, I've really enjoyed just everything I've seen from this team. And another winning week. They go 2-1-0, and really, that's all you can ask for, just to keep winning games. And winning games early in the year is going to really pay dividends as you head into March and April, as you look to lock up a playoff spot, hopefully, for the St. Louis Blues. But yeah, let me know, what are we thinking about this team? I really think that they're better than maybe we expected in coming into it. And a big part of that is Philip Broberg, not to kind of beat a dead horse here, but you could talk about how good he's been in every single game. He's on a 6-game point streak. He's not been on the ice for a 5-on-5 goal against. It's just unreal how good he's been. And I think, when we talked to Alex Ferrario in episode 1, it was clear that we needed to maybe temper some expectations, just because he is a young guy. He played less than 100 games, but he doesn't look like it when he's out there. And I've seen a lot of people on Twitter saying, as soon as you can lock him up to an extension, do it. And I think it has to be next season. But if this continues, I would imagine Doug Armstrong and Alex Steen will get to that pretty quickly and try to lock up Philip Broberg. But yeah, they go 2-1, and now we wrap up the homestand Tuesday with Winnipeg, who, like I mentioned at the beginning, time of recording, they're still undefeated. We'll see what happens after they play Pittsburgh here in a couple hours. But they've looked good, and it's one of those things with Winnipeg, like, I didn't know what to expect. I know they were really, really, really good last year, and then they got beat in the first round. But it's just like I didn't feel like there were expectations there, and people were kind of forgetting about them. And I don't necessarily think that it's wrong to kind of push them to the wayside, especially after you have such a good year and you lose to the first round. But they still got Mark Scheifele. They still got Connor Hellebuck. They got Cole Perfetti that they got re-signed this offseason. So they're always a tough team to play. They always come into St. Louis, or you go up there and you get a tough game. So you got to be ready to go Tuesday night. I mean, it's going to be probably the most fun night of the NHL season. Every team plays. It's the Frozen Frenzy or whatever they call it. So that is going to be a fun night of watching hockey. But the Blues need to respond. I'm imagining they'll go back to Bennington on Tuesday. I would be really, really surprised if they don't. But that's another thing. Bennington now, a week off between games. They split starts so far between him and Hofer, which will be huge to give Bennington some rest. And he'll be fresh now when you like I said earlier, come into March, April, and you're trying to lock up a playoff spot. You'll have your guy ready to go. But after they play Tuesday against Winnipeg, Thursday night, you're going to see an old friend, Craig Berube, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Obviously, probably the biggest point of emphasis is going to be just shutting down that core four, Matthews, Marner, Nylander, and Tavares. It's going to be the key. Matthews in 14 games against the Blues, 6 goals, 4 assists, and I think he's a +3. So you always have to know where he's at. Such a good shot. Marner, just a great player. Nylander, a great player. Tavares is, I know, taking a step back. He lost the C this offseason. They gave it to Matthews, but the Leafs have been playing really, 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 really good. Saturday night, they took a loss to the Rangers, but that's a team that they dominate a lot of games that they're in, and I mean, the Blues have to be ready to go. You cannot, this isn't even a shot at Carolina, but you can't come out like you did against Carolina because, like, Hofer was under siege. He got you out of it. If you're going up against a team in Toronto that I think is a lot better than Carolina, just talent-wise and goal-scoring-wise, and I know they got Aho, Svechnikov, Jarvis, and guys like that, but I still think Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, Matthew Nyes on the wing, like, that's a team that if you let them get 20 shots in the first period, you might be down 3-0. So you have to come out ready to play. Berube's got them playing relentless, like kind of like what you saw with the Blues. There's no give up with them. They're hard on pucks. They're physical, which is something you haven't seen from the Leafs. But the Blues have to be ready to go Thursday night, and then the week rounds out. Saturday, 6 o'clock, another Canadian team, the Montreal Canadiens, young team. They're fun to watch with Cole Caulfield, Slavkovsky, Lane Hudson. That's a team that I think you should beat, and emphasis on should, because you should have beat the Sharks last year, but you didn't 3 times. But you should beat the Canadiens. They should be able to go in there and pick up a win. I think that probably, in my opinion, lines up to be a Hofer's next start. I would say you probably see Bennington Tuesday and Thursday, Hofer Saturday against the Canadiens would be my guess, and then you're back. I think it's Ottawa on like the next Tuesday or something like that. So that'll be a next week issue. But yeah, it kind of lines up well. Goalie-wise, you got some days off. So I think Bennington Tuesday, Thursday, Hofer Saturday. You got to beat Montreal. I've liked what I've seen out of Hofer this year. So if it is his game, I think he would give you a really, really, really good chance to win that game. But aside from the games, maybe the big story for the Blues next week is what happens with the roster. Because Texier and Sundqvist, I'm imagining, are going to be back. Texier and Sundqvist, they both make it seem like they're just, like, they could have probably played this week is kind of how I gathered it. Obviously, it helps a little bit with Toropchenko being hurt, Leddy being hurt. But you got decisions to make. A couple of the routes I've seen discussed is, do you waive Kapanen, send Bolduc down, trim 2 forwards off the roster? I'm hard-pressed to think they waive Kapanen just at this point, just because I don't think that's the route you go. He just scored a goal. Maybe something gets him going, and I know he's only making $1 million, so if you do send him on waivers, there's a chance he gets claimed, but if not, he goes down to Springfield. The other option, and maybe this is the one that's more likely, just because of how P.O. Joseph has played, Ryan Suter's played well. I know Leddy's banged up, but they could send Bolduc down. I think that happens no matter what. I think Bolduc's going down whenever Texier gets back. He just has the 2 assists. I think last night he got bumped down to the 4th line by the 3rd period, if I'm not mistaken. I think Kapanen was up with that Booch and Neighbors line, unless that was just a 1 or 2 shift thing. But I remember Jamie Rivers mentioning it on the broadcast that he was up there, Kapanen was, with Booch and Neighbors. So we'll see. It seems to me like Bolduc, that's the obvious one, just because you don't have to send him on waivers. He can just go straight down. But as the corresponding move with that, you waive Scott Perunovich. I mean, he hasn't even come close to sniffing a chance to play. P.O. Joseph has been really, 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 really good so far this year. Do you just waive Perunovic, kind of end the experiment? Not the project, probably is the better way to put it, just because he's been here for how long now? He hasn't scored a goal yet in a regular season game. It just feels like there's not a spot for him on this team with how well P.O. Joseph has played. Even if a guy gets hurt, he's not next in line. It's P.O. Joseph. I know right now he would be technically with Letty hurt, but I just don't see Perunovic being like a fit for this team, because I feel like if something were to happen, say they do by Monday waive Perunovic and somebody gets hurt, I think Tyler Tucker probably is the one that comes up, and they figure it out from there. I know Perunovic is the left-handed shot, but it just doesn't seem like he would even have a spot when injuries start to pile up, and with two guys coming back in Texier and Sundqvist, like it feels like that's the option. And maybe Nathan Walker goes down instead of Bolduc. I don't know. I know Bolduc makes the most sense. Walker hasn't been bad. He was, out Thursday night. Comes in Saturday. He had the play there where Rosovic tied the game, where he could have got that puck in deep and he didn't. So maybe they look at that and just kind of part ways with Walker, and that's where Sundqvist slides in. But I would say, to me, the one that makes the most sense is you send Bolduc down, waive Perunovic. I know people don't love the idea of sending Bolduc down. They want to see him, but he just hasn't produced. He has 2 assists. He got the assist on the Neighbors goal Saturday night. It just makes the most sense. Send him down, let him play on the top line. It's working out well. Dvorsky's having a really good start to the year down there in Springfield. So that, to me, is what you do. Let me know what everybody else thinks, though, because I think there's going to be a lot of different opinions, and there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of handle this, in terms of like what you decide to do with the getting Sundqvist and Texier back in there. And then that just starts a whole new dialogue of what do the lines look like, because there's been a lot of talk about, is Saad really the answer on the top line? Like, does Holloway move back up there? Do you give Texier a look up there? So Bannister's going to have his hands full even after these roster decisions are made with who goes down or gets waived or whatever. Then you got to kind of crunch all these guys together and find some lines that click. Do we see Booch move off the center? That's, probably not, but it's an option for them as well with Texier and Sundqvist, who can play the center position, but they might start him on the wing just to let him get his legs back. So we will see. This is probably going to be the most telling week of the season for the Blues, despite the injury to Letty and Toropchenko. This is going to kind of tell you what they think about Zach Bolduc and what they've seen through 5 games he's played, and what they think of their plans in the future with Scott Perunovic. So sound off in the comments, because I think there's going to be quite a few mixed opinions on this, but otherwise, we got games Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and then a couple days off, and then we'll get next week episode in, looking at the end of the road trip and then back home against Toronto on November 2nd. But yeah, that'll do it. Another episode of the Blues Breakdown Podcast. The Blues are 4-2-0, and let's go Blues.